Hi, I'm Angie Veman, and welcome to Totally Clutch. This is the podcast for women like you to find ways to simplify your business and personal life. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Welcome back to another episode of Totally Clutch, the Clutch Businesses podcast and vlog. I am very excited about our guest today, and if I'm being totally honest, it's kind of a fangirl moment for me. So Nora Sudduth has over 20 years of experience working with some of the most incredible online companies in the world. And she recently co-founded Hello Audio, which provides private podcasting services to businesses. And if you haven't gotten hip to the private podcasting game, today's the day. We're going to hear all about it and all about what it can do for your business. And of course, on top of all of that, Nora has, an insane amount of experience and expertise and insight into sales and marketing. And so we'll have that kind of sprinkled over the top of everything that we talk about today. So it'll be rich, it'll be hearty. So with that, I want to welcome Nora to the show.
Awesome. Hi, I'm so glad to be here. So excited to talk with you today.
Yes, me, same. So why don't we start out, if you can just tell us a little bit about your background and kind of, you've got a rich background. So about your background and then how you came to, to do what you're doing now with Hello Audio.
Absolutely. So I'll keep it as tight as I can. Because there's a lot. I came from corporate. So I kind of was one of those people that took that traditional path to success, right? Handful of degrees, started climbing the corporate ladder, decided, even though it was a great experience, decided that I was going to follow this entrepreneurial path, created a marketing agency, took that agency to multiple six figures in less than 9 months. And during that time in that marketing agency, I started to use a tool that everyone now knows, but it was brand new back then, and it was ClickFunnels. And so I kind of started with WordPress. If you were a marketing agency back in the day, that was kind of your tool of choice. Then we moved to ClickFunnels. Russell Brunson found out what I was doing. One day got a Voxer from Russell and said, hey, I think you need to come and help me create my certified partner program. Then I ended up closing down my agency at that time, partnered with Russell, built not only the certification program for ClickFunnels, also another coaching program for ClickFunnels. And then from that wonderful experience of being exposed to thousands of marketing funnels along the way, ended up meeting my co-founders, Lindsay and Derek Padilla, who at the time were helping people teach better online. And Derek and Lindsay had this amazing idea, which was to use private podcasts to help course creators get their content consumed. And we'll talk about what a private podcast is here in a moment. And because of my background in tech, I have one of my degrees is in computer science, so I'm kind of a tech nerd. And I had worked for various SaaS companies, including ClickFunnels, along the way. So being able to jump in and help create this amazing SaaS business in Hello Audio has been absolutely a dream come true, especially because I am obsessed with client success and client results. And we'll talk a little bit about why private podcasts are so important to get those numbers where you want them to be. So that is kind of how I ended up today where I'm at. And I think at this point, I've stopped counting, but I've helped now sell over $500 million of stuff online. And wow. So I love all things marketing and sales, and being obsessed with client success kind of gives me the whole picture from sales to fulfillment, which I love.
That's amazing. Yeah. Okay. So Lindsay was actually so she used to sell, I don't know, like a marketing content calendar thing. Yes. I think that was like her pocket product or whatever. Yep. That was one of the very first, I think it might have actually been the first thing that I purchased as a business owner. I found one of her ads or something like that. But yeah, so cool.
I love it. Yeah. What a small world. Isn't that crazy?
So crazy. I mean, it gets smaller and smaller every day, but yeah. Okay. And then, so what is a private podcast and what is Hello Audio in the private podcasting world?
Great question. So most people are familiar with a public podcast, right? If you're listening to this episode, this is an amazing public podcast, right? And what that means, public podcasts are just available for anyone to subscribe all around the world. Anyone can click that subscribe button and you can get that content. Now, as a podcast owner, you don't necessarily have a ton of insight into who specifically is listening. You might be able to tell how many downloads they have, or maybe what device they're on, or where in the world that they're located, depending on which analytics tool that you use. But that content is open to anyone. Where private podcasts are a little bit different. They actually look, feel, operate, and play just like a normal public podcast. So they play in your favorite podcast apps of choice, whatever one you're using to listen to this. Chances are a private podcast would play in that just the same. So it has that amazing, convenient feature where you can turn off your phone, stick that phone in your pocket and continue to listen, which is fantastic. But how private podcasts are different is that you get to control who gets access to it and for how long. So it's the ability to put gated content into a private podcast makes things a little bit different. And the way that you can provide access is a little bit different. So in a private podcast, everyone gets the same access link. Everyone subscribes to that same RSS feed. But with a private podcast, your access link is actually tied to the listener's email address, which means only that listener, when they click that link, you can set it so that link expires. As soon as they load that private podcast into their favorite player of choice, it expires, which means now that content is not shareable. And it also means because that access link was tied to their specific email on the back end, you know exactly when that person is listening and what they're listening to, which opens a lot of possibilities when you're looking at marketing and fulfillment opportunities.
Yeah, that's huge. Because I have to say that that's one of the things with podcasting. So I've been doing this for a couple of years now. And, with all of the marketing things that we do, whether it's social media, whether it's email marketing, you can get really granular with the data that you can pull from that. But the experience with podcasting is the exact opposite. I mean,
Yes.
knowing this, so the number of downloads is kind of helpful, but it feels more like a vanity metric than it does like a metric that you can actually do anything with. And even, and I guess this is a little tricky, but I mean, you can create data in any way that you want, but it's even hard to see how popular an episode is because all you can get is what that episode, like how many downloads that episode has had over time or like during a certain week. But if you released it, 2 years ago, obviously that number is going to be lower today than it was, 2 years ago when you released it. So anyways, you can't really even tell which episodes are popular. So you don't know what content your audience wants. You don't know how to improve really, except for even comments, likes or comments and things like that people are leaving in the, I don't know, why can't I think of what the reviews for your show there, but even that is pretty, I don't know, it's hard. And so I feel like the podcasting world kind of suffers a bit because, we're all just kind of shooting in the dark in some ways.
It's true. It's not as actionable. It's not, with what we've done at Hello Audio is we've taken things a little bit, to the next level in terms of being able to tailor the content. So we kind of operate a little bit more like an audio CRM. So similar to the systems that you were just talking about that give you that actionable insight, you can actually tag your listeners in Hello Audio. So I might tag, depending on how you segment your audience, whether it's with interest or maybe it's a buyer versus a non-buyer, they can all subscribe to the same podcast feed. So that same private podcast feed, but now based on their tags, you can actually slip a specific episode for a specific tag. So now it's not only about being able to reach people, because audio, we all know that audio helps unlock all of the hours of the day. We're not sitting here at the screen, and God bless it, we don't necessarily need to sit at the screen any more than we already do, right? So we're actually increasing our ability to reach those folks at more hours of the day. So your ideal audience, meet them where they're already at. And now we're actually able to make our content more relevant. Where, in a traditional or a conventional public podcast, you can't do that. Everyone gets the same information at the same time. Whereas with that private podcast, now all of a sudden, the non-buyers get a specific episode. People who purchase something specific get a bonus episode, and it's all the same feed, which is, it just, I think, takes everything to the next level. And the other cool thing about a private podcast versus a public podcast, the other big difference I'll mention is in the delivery. So as I mentioned, public podcast, this episode's getting released for everyone who subscribes to this podcast on a specific date. And you can do that with private podcasts. You can have a date-driven release system. But the really cool part is you get to do evergreen or dripped releases as well. So that means if I opt in to your audiobook or your private feed, my day one would be today. Today's the first day I opted in. But let's say you opted in for that same private podcast feed next week. Your day one would be next week. And now we can be subscribed to the same feed, but our schedules in terms of how that content gets dripped is based on the individual listener, which is very different and now opens up a lot of possibilities.
That's amazing. That's really great because I guess there's an element of that I also kind of wonder about with more traditional podcasting, because if you just find this podcast today, there's 2 years of content that, was in our minds at least kind of sequenced in a way that would be helpful and beneficial, but you're finding it just in this moment. So again, that creates, it's just a different, you think about it differently when you're preparing or when you're creating them, because you can't curate the experience for somebody. Whereas in the private world, you totally can.
Absolutely. And I think it opens the door for the type of content that you can turn into a podcast. When we think of podcasts, we think of shows, we think of interviews like this one. And with a private podcast, now, we're really changing what it means to have a podcast. There's a lot of folks listening to this that are creators that create content for their marketing, for their delivery systems, for their, all of the things that you sell. And you're like, I never really want to start a podcast. And yet what we're really doing is we're turning that content and we're putting it into a podcast as a delivery mechanism, as a communication channel to reach more people. So you can podcast your course, you can podcast your coaching call replays, you can podcast your email newsletters, because at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're just making it easier and more convenient for people to consume the content that you're spending all that time creating. And we really, truly want your audience to listen to and consume.
Yeah. Are those the most common ways that people are using private podcasts? Is courses, newsletters, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I would say in general, there's 3 different ways that people use private podcasts to grow their business. And so we look at the 3 big buckets. And I would say 2 at this moment are probably more popular than the third. And yet I think the third is growing. So the first one is marketing. So a lot of folks are using private podcasts in their marketing content. So that might be, folks that had that old PDF lead magnet. And we all know what's happening they all go to that graveyard, right, of PDFs that we all have, right? And it's just what it is. So a lot of folks are turning that PDF into a spoken word, like a private podcast, like an audiobook or private podcast. And they're seeing their conversions just skyrocket. So from 20, we've got case studies that went from that 20% conversion rate on that PDF, which is actually decent for cold traffic, all the way to 80%.
Wow. And that's opt-in conversion or sales conversion?
Opt-in conversion. But we're seeing sales conversions go up as well. So I can give a couple numbers on that. But if you think about when you opt in for that 46-page PDF, you're like, am I really going to read that? As a consumer, you kind of know even if you're interested in the topic, you're going to download it. But it's, you're not going to read it. Or just like, I'm not going to read this. I'm not even going to do this. But now putting it as an audio has a higher perceived value than that PDF, and people just trust themselves more to consume it. So that's why we're seeing conversion rates, and it's different, right? You stand out. You're not just another business that's offering another PDF. As an opt-in, you're actually doing something different, and it's unique, and people get to know you. There's a lot of benefits for using audio when it comes to your marketing. And the other thing that you had mentioned was sales conversions. So we're seeing folks use, whether it doesn't matter what your launch strategy is, maybe it's webinars, maybe it's a video series, maybe you're doing a workshop or something like that. The fact is show up rates are a little lower no matter what you do, right? It's whenever you put that webinar, it might be a great time of day for some of your people, but it's probably not going to work for everyone. And consumption rates are down. We all know with launch content and with your marketing content in general, if they don't consume it, they probably aren't going to buy. And so using these private podcasts is a way to get your launch content consumed by making it, it's not rocket science, right? We're just making it easier for them to consume the data or consume that workshop or consume that webinar. now we're seeing conversions go way up, whether it's you're running a challenge, whether you're doing a work. So it's all of those front end activities that you're using as a client acquisition strategy. By just making it easier for people to consume that marketing information or that content marketing, all that stuff, we're starting to see higher conversions on the back end as well.
That's great. And are people just taking the content that they've already created? You might have said this already, but the videos that they're taking, just turning them into audio, and that's it?
Yes, it can be that simple. And the cool part is with we built this at Hello Audio. We truly did build this for business owners, for creators, because I know I've personally been to all those crazy, maybe shady sites that turn those videos into audio, right? Where I'm like, I'm going to get malware, I'm going to get a virus, right? So what we've done at Hello Audio is for course creators or folks that have challenge content, any video or media, you can actually upload them in bulk and we will create the audio for you automatically. So if you upload all of your course videos, we will automatically convert them to high quality audio on the back end, and you don't have to do anything else. Maybe you're going to change the titles or reorder them or whatever. But I would say the biggest thing for us in terms of creating a tool that was easy to use is we pay attention to how long people take to create their first feed. And right now we have over 70% of our users that launch their first audio feed in less than a day. And not many SaaS products can get people up and running that quickly. And that's really important to us. Yes.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm writing that down. I'm taking notes because I'm like, I mean, that's pretty genius and pretty slick.
It's a big one. And you know, marketing is audio if you think about all the content you've created, whether it's blog posts, email newsletters, email sequences, webinars, the intent is to let people create awareness, let them have the epiphanies they need to shift those beliefs, create different beliefs in order for them to buy. And that doesn't happen unless they consume that information. And I think it's a lot more powerful if we look at the studies that show, what are the most powerful medium for memorability and the ones that are going to create the strongest connection. Audio wins. I have nothing against video.
Yeah.
Audio wins.
Why is that, do you think?
Part of it, I think, is that it's the situations that people put themselves in, because we're putting on our headphones. It's, we tend to not, especially if we're listening to podcasts while we're walking the dog or we're driving to car or sitting in the line at carpool or whatever that looks like. It's a more intimate experience where we're actually, it just creates more of this memorability. We're actually to remember things better. It affects us in more emotional ways. So people have done studies on heart rate and all of the things that it impacts someone versus listening to that same exact content or watching a video. And I don't know if anyone is like me out there, I will click play on a video, but I have 70 plus other tabs open. And so I have absolutely, and that video ends and I was like, wait, what was that? And what tab was it on? I can't find it. So for me, audio is a great opportunity to reach your audience in a way that lets them get to know you, that's more personable, and it's a lot easier for them to integrate that into their day-to-day lives.
That's so interesting. So I didn't really think about this, and because I'm not a huge, this is a dirty secret, I guess, but I'm not a huge podcast consumer. Just because I work from home, so I don't spend a lot of time in the car. I don't have, kids' soccer games to go to, things like that. So I have a dog that I walk, but that's really it. So anyways, there was something that came to me as you were talking, that I have joined a lot of courses. I've consumed a lot of course content, all video. And every single time, whether it's a course, whether it's a YouTube how-to video, I am watching that thing on two times the speed or 1.5. And so they're just clipping through, because for me, it's about I want the information, I want it all, and I want it quickly. I don't want to sit here, I don't want to sit through this. Yeah. But there is something that that I just realized as you were saying that with audio, I don't really want to do that. I have time. I feels like I have time to consume that. And so I do in a really, in a way that's easier. So when I'm watching these videos on high speed, I'm taking in the information, but probably only 50%, if that. But if I'm really listening to the audio and really, kind of diving into it, I'm certainly going to take more in than I would a high-speed video.
Yeah, it's just a more of a low pressure way to consume that information. And I would even, for those folks that are listening to this, and you're like, yeah, all my stuff is visual, that's not going to work for me. We've seen studies that even if you give folks the ability to listen to your content and then they log into the member site, right? They log in, they watch your videos, they're pre-framed, they've heard it before, they know where you're taking them. And so their success rates are actually higher because they've had the opportunity to consume it once already. Because, in terms of repetition and learning, we know that that's obviously the key, and, to really understanding things. And so even if you have a very visual content or very visual information, it's still really useful to allow people to consume it with an audio form.
Yeah, and I think there's something really beautiful about what this is, I think, kind of a common theme in what I'm hearing from you. Just, I know that this probably isn't the intention, maybe it is, but there's something about, I think course creators create courses, they're like, the content is there, here it is. Yes, I would love everybody to go through it, but everybody probably won't. And there is something beautiful about this, that you're still creating that content, you're not overburdening yourself, but you are giving people you're giving your consumers a greater experience and a greater likelihood of success.
Yeah.
And that's really lovely. I just really, I don't know, it feels important to point that out, that it's not about, yes, your conversions on the front end might be a bit better, but it's also, the success rate of what you're doing. And especially, that's so important, I feel like, because there's, now we're hearing over and over and over again that, like, what is it, 25% of people actually buy courses and can no, it's actually like 10%
Yeah,
of
depending
people.
on the study, it's less.
Yeah. So this is a really lovely way to not just pad your pockets, but, actually
Yes.
like fulfill on the mission of the product that you created.
Absolutely. And that's actually the second reason. So we talked about marketing. That
Yeah.
second one is fulfillment. It is delivery. So whether you're a digital course creator, whether you run a coaching program or you're a consultant, to your exact point, why are we making it so hard for people to get the information that we created in order to get the results that we want them to get? If we can just make it easier for them to consume it. So by having a podcasted version of your course, like Amy Porterfield is one of Hello Audio's clients. She uses it for her DCA content, right? And her videos are gorgeous. They're amazing.
Yeah.
And she still sees the value. So we definitely want people to consume those videos. And she sees the value in allowing the busy folks in her community, the adult learners who have a full-time job and they're trying to do this at night or in the mornings or on the weekend, is a low pressure way to consume her amazing content to get the results that she ultimately wants them to get. And that's the amazing part of being able to use private podcasts on the fulfillment and delivery side. We've actually seen folks, and they've not changed anything about their content. Nothing. All they did was they put their content into a private podcast and gave people access to it. They've seen their client success rate skyrocket up to 400%.
Wow.
400% higher just by making it easier for people to consume that content. And it is, for someone, and I'm sure everyone listening to this, you're obviously heart-centered entrepreneurs, heart-centered business owners. We care about our people. That's one of the reasons we started our business. It goes back to our why of how we want to show up in the world and the results we want people to get that invest in us. This is a very easy, and it's easier than people think, and it costs less than people think. It's such an easy way to create a massive win for your audience. And you said it yourself. I know I've invested multiple six figures in courses and coaching programs over the last few decades. And I just think, man, what if someone would have made it easier for me to consume all that information? What a massive difference it would have made for me.
Yeah.
And now we're giving folks the opportunity to do that for their audiences, which I think is great.
Yeah, that's huge. That's really huge. And then are there ways, so those are ways kind of on the front end that people are using private podcasting, are there ways that they're starting to use it within their own businesses?
Yes. So we talked about marketing, we talked about fulfillment and delivery. The third way that people are using it is more internal or with operations. And so if you think about some great use cases, employee onboarding, or even client onboarding. We have folks that run agencies or ad agencies, and we have some processes we need to level set and set expectations, or walk our clients through what to expect as they engage with us, whether you're a PR firm or an ad agency, whatever that looks like. And if you think about traditional onboarding and where that has fallen short, right? We think about if you're a new employee and you were onboarded, here's the bazillion page employee handbook. In good luck, sign when you're done, right? And no one's going to read that. That's horrible. And I think, we look at the importance, especially in this post-pandemic world, of the importance of culture, and the companies that survived being, everywhere, a distributed workforce. They survived the pandemic, are the companies that had the strongest communication channels. And so, when we look at what a private podcast, it sounds silly. It's like private podcasts can help build culture and sustain culture. Yes. Because if you think how do you feel when you read a PDF of an employee handbook, right? That's not super fun. And what if you had the CEO in your ear telling you about why they built this company and why she gets up every day? And what if that CEO was sharing success stories? So you got to hear the impact your company is making in people's lives. Now you're interested, right? What if that CEO was then also sharing the values of the company? Right. And so now that takes that employee handbook and it brings it to life. And now as we have these employees that are starting and these team members that are in your business, they're excited, right? You've created this amazing opportunity that they're stepping into. And it's more than just that employee, that PDF flat employee handbook. And I think, even when it comes to it, whether it's employee onboarding or client onboarding, yes, you can put that in a member site. Yes, you can have people take quizzes. But that's not the type of experience that most of us want. And it's not the experience that most of our clients want either, especially if you're working with, busy folks, which I don't know anyone that's not working with busy folks these days, right? So if we think about that, just giving people the opportunity to load it into your player, into your phone, stick your phone in their pocket, and they're just listening to what to expect. They're a lot more likely to consume that information than if you had them go through a step-by-step onboarding process. And that is going to make a lot of difference going back in your operational and your team success, and then also just in your fulfillment if you're doing this for clients as well. We're seeing more of that catch on, especially with distributed workforces that are in multiple time zones, right? It's kind of hard to do an all-hands Zoom meeting, which no one really wants all the time anyway. But to find a time that works across a global company can be very challenging. But by continuing to keep your employees engaged and continuing to have that open communication channel with updates is big. And a lot of companies are starting to use private podcasts for that now.
Interesting. Yeah, I was even thinking while you were talking about that, the onboarding process, but even, especially in a small business, it feels like, or it can feel like, every week you're coming with a different focus or a different value or a different thing. And all of that is really, I think it's really important to communicate to, all the folks on your team, because without it, that's where I think people tend to get whiplash, or the whiplash is a little stronger. Like, what? You told me to do this last week. Why am I doing this? Or why did I waste my time? Right? Like those types of things start to pop into people's heads. And if you have an opportunity to just say, you know what, here's what's on my mind this week, in a way that's easy for them to consume whenever they, while they're, catching up on emails in the morning or whatever it is, that could be really valuable. And I say that too, because, retention in a small business is a huge, oh my gosh. I mean, onboarding is a huge thing. I think, we all hire somebody with the hope and dream of like the next day they're going to take 50% of the stuff off our plate. Meanwhile, 6 months later, that's not always the case. So it seems like such a valuable and really easy thing. I mean, and also doing audio is pretty low pressure,
It's
right? Like,
easier. Yeah.
it's so much easier. You don't even have to put on your full face, right?
Nope. No videos, and the editing is a lot easier. So you don't have to worry about you being in one frame and then you said something and you're totally in a different frame. So you look kind of wonky. It's like rapid content creation. All you need is, you don't even really need a fancy mic. You just need to talk. And then, being able to throw that into a private podcast. To me, that's everything. It's
Yeah.
one thing to say, oh, I'm going to, even a course creator, I would even argue, like, I'm going to create this beautiful course and there's high production quality. And then how long does it actually take to do versus your beta launch or whatever that's going to look like? Just get it out. Your information is valuable. It's an audio only course or an audio delivery. If it gets it done, is going to be a lot more valuable. So I agree. The speed is everything.
Yeah, that's so great. I'm sold. I am 100% sold. I think this is so genius. And I guess the one question that I have is the only way for people to consume it, to create an account or to sign in to something to then download it onto their phone?
So the cool part about what we did at Hello Audio is we chose not to have a separate app that listeners would have to download because that's just friction. So what we did, we looked at the numbers and the millions of people across the entire globe that are using podcast apps. Right? It's like, why would we ask them to download anything else? They're already in whatever that looks like for you. Might be Apple Podcasts, might be Spotify, might be, a podcast addict. I don't know. Everyone kind of has their favorite of what they really like. And as long as that podcast app accepts RSS feeds, so some don't, some do. We're really lucky at Hello Audio to be one of the partners that we were selected, and we work with Spotify. So our private podcast can play on the Spotify. Not all private podcasts do, but the ones that are hosted at Hello Audio, because we are a Spotify partner, can do that, which is, we're really lucky to be able to be working with them. And, why would we have them download anything else? Let's keep this as easy as possible. So typically how that process works is the creator, the content owner, would create an account at Hello Audio, put all your media in, create your private podcast, give access. You can do, we have direct integrations with a lot of things, including we have a Zapier integration. So all of that can be automated, which is your love language. I know you can automate all of that, which is fantastic. And that could be whether you run a membership site, it can be automated. People purchase, they automatically get access. Even if they stop paying, you can automatically remove access. So all of that can be automated, which is great. But then at the end of the day, what that listener sees is just one email with a link, their unique link. They click on that link, it opens in whatever podcast app they want, and you can continue. It's like a new inbox, right? Instead of checking their Gmail or their inbox, whatever they're using, now you're able to communicate with them in an audio inbox through their podcast app.
Yeah, that's amazing. I even see that then being, or potentially, I guess this would be a great question for you, is even from a sales perspective, I could see that being valuable too, because, I've gotten into the habit of doing looms kind of on the front end of sales, but also on the back end. Like, once I've delivered a product, I create a loom library for them to, go in and access to, just refresh how to do certain things, so that they can live and survive without, being shackled to me or a developer. But I can see that being really valuable in a sales perspective too, of like, here's the process. So rather than having to sit on, a 15-minute Zoom call then turns into like an hour Zoom call, you've got all of that content available for them that, again, they can consume whenever it's convenient for them.
Absolutely. We have folks that do discovery calls or consultations, on the front end. And we have folks that put that in a private podcast, whether they work with, and if they continue to work with that client, they can just continue to put their coaching calls or whatever calls they have in there. And the cool part about a private podcast is it's not shareable, right? It's a protected piece of content, and you can use the show notes just like you do in a public podcast. So if you wanted to put your Loom links in there or other links to resources or PDFs or a Google Drive, whatever you put together for your client, you can still absolutely have all the links in there. And then everything is delivered right there on that client's phone. And it's there, and it's just super convenient. And we do have folks that do one-on-one feeds. They have one feed for one client. And that we have that whether they're consultants, we have folks that do life coaching, or that they're doing therapy sessions, whatever, or energy reading sessions.
That's
so many different
amazing.
types of businesses, even private meditations or customized meditations that people have done for folks. One feed, one person, everything's in one place, and it's so easy to deliver.
That's incredible. I've said this and thought this for so long that if I just could remember all of the exercises and activities that every therapist or coach or whatever has given me, I would be the healthiest, most enlightened person in the entire world. But when shit hits the fan, I can't remember that breathing exercise, or I can't remember that like guided meditation, right? Like, and what an amazing thing after every session to just take those. And now they've got access to it at any moment.
Anytime. And because I know you and I have probably invested heavily in various coaches in our lifetime. And you know, we can get the Zoom replay. We'll get the link to the, how many times do we actually watch it?
Never.
None of them.
No.
But think about, you know, and for those of us that are coaches and consultants, how many times do we want our client to remember that? All the time, right? And so by putting those replays in a private podcast, and you can put notes in there, listen to this when, go to this, you can even put timestamps in there where they had an epiphany or anything. It's a game changer when it comes to your client success.
Yeah, I love this. I love it. Okay, I've been so engrossed in this conversation that I have not put up your information. So how can people find you?
Absolutely. So if you want to know more about Hello Audio itself, you can go to helloaudio.fm. We do truly believe in what the magic of private podcasts. We do host public podcasts as well. So if you do have a public podcast, or if you want to do both, we have that. But you can try it out for 7 days. No credit card required whatsoever. We like I said, we just believe in it so much that we wanted to make that as easy as possible. So you can find us there at helloaudio.fm. And if you want to connect with me personally, I'm at Nora Sudduth.
Yeah, and Nora, okay, so Nora is obviously all up in Hello Audio, but also you're a sales and marketing expert, so people can work with you in that capacity as well, right?
Absolutely. So I work with different companies, all different sizes. If you're looking to optimize the way I phrase it is either I'm optimizing your top line revenue with marketing, or I'm optimizing your bottom line revenue because I'm streamlining and I'm working on your profitability and your margins. So I'm cleaning up some of your fulfillment stuff. But you know, at the end of the day, for me, I also do guest coaching. So if you happen to have a group coaching program and you need someone to come in and teach on a specific topic, I absolutely love to serve audiences from around the world. So yeah, anything you need when it comes to that, I would love to have a conversation.
Yeah, and I can attest. So I am lucky enough to be able to witness the coaching on a regular basis, not every week, but every other week, maybe. And wow, really good. And really, I guess, broad in all of the things that you can advise people on and coach people on. So all different levels of business, whether you're just starting out or, you know, are making $10 million plus. It's really, really incredible.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be able to serve the audiences that I don't get to build those audiences myself. And I love, and it's great. I just love to serve other people's audiences. It's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, that's really special. And I really appreciate that. And I know everybody listening, watching, listening, I guess is going to be what I'll be pushing everybody to do from here on out, but appreciates as well. So thank you, Nora. Is there anything else you want to cover or make sure that we walk away with before we go?
No, if you have any questions, if anything came up, if you have ideas, if you have questions around audio or marketing or optimizations, definitely reach out. I'm always available, always accessible online. And thank you so much for having me here and being able to serve your audience. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. I am so grateful. And like I said, I mean, I'll be honest, I came into this being like private podcasting. We'll see. I don't know. Totally your biggest fan from here on out. So thank you for sharing all of the ways that we can be using it, all of the and everything that it does, not just for us, but everybody that's taking it in. That's incredible.
Thank you. It's awesome. I believe in it. I believe in it so much. It's a game changer. It's a game changer.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much, Nora.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Rate and review this podcast and share it with all of your friends. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you're leaving with some great things that can help you move from hustle to flow, because I believe in you and your business. Until next time.